Hello! We are celebrating World Week of Italian Cuisine, bringing you the beautiful, delicious cuisine from Italy to you. Today, we see a beautiful recipe, tortelli alla Ferrarese. We have seen it made by our grandmother before, the traditional recipe, and now we are going to see it in the most modern and contemporary way. So I have a beautiful guest and a very fantastic chef of ALMA. He's an ALMA ambassador chef, Chef Carlo M Ricci, with me.
Hello, hi Benita. How are you?
Hello, Chef. I'm fine. Lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you too.
Lovely to have you with us.
Thank you.
So shall we start with the recipe?
Let's do it.
Tortelli alla Ferrarese. Let's see how it is being made in the modern way. Okay.
Right, Benita, before we start, here you are.
Thank
An
you.
apron for you. You're very welcome.
I'm going to be helping you then.
Excellent, that's a good thing. The idea of this recipe is to revisit a little bit a very traditional Italian recipe. We're going to be using pretty much exactly the same ingredients, but we're going to be rearranging things around to get something maybe slightly different, maybe very different. We're not only going to be using whole eggs, we are going to be adding, in fact, some egg yolks to our pasta dough. The ratio is about 1 egg to 5 egg yolks every 200 grams of flour. The idea of that is to add a lot more richness and maybe also some insulating properties to this pasta so that we can use a fairly liquid filling, a fairly loose filling that is gonna, in our final preparation, feel very, very smooth in the mouth. So we're playing around with things, not so much with tradition because we're using very traditional approaches, we're just combining things and we are tackling this recipe in a slightly different way. So let's begin with the pasta. So we need to start with the pasta dough. First thing, we'll put our flour on a wooden surface. It's always best to work on a wooden surface. This is very much the perfect environment, if so we could say, for pasta. We're gonna crack all our eggs in the center and we're gonna add the egg yolks as well. As I said, egg yolks add a lot of richness. So the pasta is gonna be maybe a little bit hard to work, but this is gonna allow us to have a very, very thin sheet of pasta at the end. So it's gonna be, in a sort of way, kind of very rich, very firm, fairly elastic, but also somewhat waterproof. And by that I mean that it's gonna be able to hold moisture very, very well. Just as we would do with a traditional pasta dough, we begin by mixing the eggs and we get flour from the side of the well into the mixture. We will work this preparation until we have not so much normal flour to fold in, but until we have a comfortable working surface that we can tackle with a different instrument rather than a fork. So the idea is to bring really all the ingredients together, and then at this point we can move from the fork onto a spatula. This is gonna, thank you Bini, this is gonna allow us really to keep our hands as clean as possible to begin with. The dough is gonna feel very different when compared to one with whole eggs only. But what you should really know is that there are doughs in Italy that are made also with yolk only. So very, very hard.
Chef, may I ask you something?
Please do.
So when you look at the traditional tortelli alla Ferrarese, the dough is an egg dough.
Yes.
And then now you are making something more contemporary and it's a different interpretation. So what is your sentiment or feeling from the tradition to the contemporary?
Well, I say, first of all, you should really know what the traditional recipe looks like. You don't want to, I wouldn't even use the word innovate. You don't want to change, you don't want to work on recipes that you really don't know that well. So if you want to work on a traditional recipe, you really should know it by heart. You should have tasted it, you should have understood it, its context, its history, and then maybe you can start putting a few twists onto it.
So contemporary comes after you have a strong tradition behind every recipe.
Absolutely, yeah. You can't innovate something that wasn't there already. So.
Oh, I do agree with you completely.
Sì, questa può prendere anche l'altro volo, cominciamo. Let's see, we might adjust a little bit of water, it doesn't matter, it's for the camera, so. Okay.
Okay.
Cool.
Do you want I can bring it.
I might wet my hands.
Okay.
It could be enough, okay?
Okay.
When you get to the point where all the ingredients have come together, you can start working with your hands.
Wow, the dough has come together beautifully.
It has come together, but you really want a smooth one. So this is the moment where you should really put your elbow in it and work it for a few minutes. Once you get a nice and smooth dough, rest it for at least an hour. You want the dough to relax, all the tension to be kind of dissipated, lost, and then you can move on to the sheeting.
Do you mind if I work on it?
Please, off you go.
Oh boy. Now that the pasta dough is resting, let us look at the filling for tortelli alla Ferrarese.
So the approach was pretty much the one that you would take to prepare the traditional recipe. You get the pumpkin, cut it in half or cut it in pieces, roast it, pull it out of the oven, scoop the pulp out of the skin, you would sieve the pumpkin, and then you would start adding ingredients, right? But I was talking to Nonna earlier on, and as I was saying, you need to understand what tradition is like before you can innovate. And she was telling me the story of this dish. She was telling me that before it became what it is now, it was very heavy on spices. So I thought, why not try and recreate somehow, obviously just in my mind, because I've never tasted it, this flavor just in the filling. So I've decided to take all the ingredients out of it, except for pumpkin and spices.
I see. So you have taken out the Parmigiano out of it.
Absolutely. It's going in our recipe in a different way.
Okay, so modern innovation in techniques.
I'd say so, yeah, maybe in a way. And when you're talking about innovating, then here the whole idea was trying to work with flavors. Trying to recreate something that I actually don't know, but I can maybe imagine by hearing Nona's stories about how this dish used to be. And then technique when it comes to maybe the pasta dough and also the other ingredients of the recipe, which we're going to be explaining later on. But as far as it goes, on here we have pumpkin puree, pure pumpkin puree, salt, a little bit of salt, peppercorns, nutmeg, and cinnamon.
Oh, so it's quite loaded with spices.
Absolutely. Hoopla, pardon me. Absolutely. So,
Pepper,
yep.
cinnamon, and here we have our nutmeg.
When looking at the roots of this recipe, I understand the nutmeg and cinnamon were there. Pepper wasn't so much, ginger was there, however. But I thought maybe to keep it a little bit more pertinent to the tastes of both, maybe to keep it a little bit more pertinent to the Italian taste, I decided to use black pepper, which is a very heavily used spice in Italian cuisine.
Wow.
So this is it. That's all there is in this filling, nothing more. And the idea is, because its consistency is, yes, it is kind of coming together, but it's very wet. And this is why I wanted to create that dough that had a little bit of extra fatness, richness into it to contain the filling, or make sure that the pasta wouldn't get wet really quickly right away.
Wow, I see. So your idea of contemporary is totally sticking to the traditions, yet
Absolutely.
it is contemporary. I am very curious to see what happens next.
Do you want to try it?
I would love to.
Off you go. Find a spoon. That's a lot. There's quite a few spices. Can you feel them? Yeah.
I do. I can feel the pepper. It's coarse ground.
Yeah. Is it quite intense?
It is intense.
And that was the idea at the end. So I want a filling, but I don't want so much filling as you would find in the normal recipe. So I'm gonna make it maybe slightly smaller than the really big ones, and then it's just a matter of mixing everything together.
Yeah, I can feel the cinnamon and the nutmeg, everything. It's
Cool.
beautiful.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
And is there an underlying flavor of pumpkin?
Pumpkin, it's there. It's a rich, voluptuous vegetable.
Cool, that's what we wanted. Now it's time to sheet the pasta and fill out tortelli.
Yeah.
So if Nonna was here, she'd probably reproach me for using a machine. She's
Yes.
definitely the master of the rolling pin.
Oh, yes, she had this beautiful rolling pin and she rolled it out. A very thin, beautiful pasta.
Absolutely, and the real truth behind this, I'm using this because if I were to use a rolling pin, I'll probably embarrass myself.
I have learned it today.
I grew up with machines, and I guess this is my limit. So let's sheet it through the machine now.
Yes. So we have obtained this beautiful sheet of pasta using the pasta machine.
And it's now time to close our tortelli. I am gonna choose to cut them round, which is gonna leave us a little bit of excess dough, but that doesn't have to be wasted. You can use any other recipes, or if you were making more batches, you could fold it with a fresh batch of the same pasta and then sheet again. If you didn't add too much flour, you could probably resheet this one and utilize it for the same batch as well.
Lovely. So we are not wasting any dough
No,
at
absolutely.
all.
You don't wanna.
That is beautiful.
You don't wanna waste too much of it. Okay, so I'll start on my side. We'll decide how to go. We'll cut rings into it. Okay. We'll try to utilize as much dough space as possible. So without discs of pasta ready, we'll need a little bit of water. Maybe just also have handy a little bit of flour to dust with, and then we'll need our filling. The idea is to put as much filling in as you can without knowing that you're going to be able to close them.
Okay.
So we want just the edges free, so we're going to get a good amount of filling in the center of every single one of them, and then we're going to close them.
So this shape, is it traditional shape?
It is, but I guess here is kind of like interpreted in a very untraditional way. So it is a way of finding them, but it's probably not the way you will find this preparation prepared and so on. So I guess it kind of like, it matches, but the purist will be probably shivering right now. So once we have it, as it is, I like to wet the sides just a little bit, fold it in half, try to match it. Try to match it as well as I can. And then to close it, I also like to work on a surface. So I will put it down, give it a fold on the sides, pull it in, pull it in, and then when the two edges are meeting, I will kind of squeeze them down together and give the pasta a little round shape like that. So that you would have, I guess, something, a little half moon of pasta hugging itself.
Beautiful, beautiful. A beautiful geometric circle turned to half moon, the mezzaluna, and then you got the beautiful shape. May I try one?
Yeah, sure, off you go. Remember to weigh your hands, or at least your finger. I'm sure you can do a better job than I did at matching the sides. I was looking at one.
I'm trying.
Yeah, that's what you want to do. Press it so you know it's not going to come undone.
Okay. Am I doing it right?
That's perfect. And if you put
then,
it down, give
like
it
you.
two little indentations on the sides with your thumb.
These.
Like that. Cool. Bring it in.
And then
That's
the
cool.
fold is down.
Yeah, that's good.
This.
Try not to pull it up. Pull it flat and out so that you know you're going to have straight out pointing.
Okay.
And then you just press them together.
Okay.
That's good.
Okay.
Perfect. Fantastic. And there you have it. Cool.
There.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's make them all now.
Okay.
Right. On my side.
And here we have our pasta ready. Tortelli alla Ferrarese revisited to you.
So now on to the other ingredients, I guess.
Yes, the Parmigiano Reggiano. I'm so curious.
Absolutely. So the way I thought we could serve this is we have the pumpkin in the ravioli. Generally, you put some Parmigiano Reggiano in there as well. But it's such a nice ingredient. I like it so much. I mean, it's got so much character, and it's also an important part of the recipe. So I thought, why not make a fondue with it, so that we get all the flavor of this cheese into the dish.
I see.
And the idea is to put a little bit of fondue on the base of the dish, and then the tortelli on top.
Okay, so all I see is that all the ingredients from the tradition are still remaining in this contemporary dish, and everything is coming, it's in layers. You're putting them in different layers. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
Yes, they're coming, like you said, the fondue, the pasta, everything is together.
Cool.
Let's go.
And to make the fondue, I'm going to use this machine that basically heats and blends at the same time. So it's going to melt our ingredients. And
It's a Thermomix.
It's a Thermomix, yes. And all it's going to go in there is just cream and half the amount of cream in grated Parmigiano Reggiano.
Wow.
And all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna allow these ingredients to heat up and blend, so that at the end we're gonna have a very smooth sauce. If you didn't have a machine like this, then you could simply use a pan. By putting both the ingredients together on very gentle heat and stirring constantly, you'll eventually get with a fondue. One thing, make sure you never bring it to boiling, because otherwise it would kind of curdle up and you wouldn't have the sauce that you see.
Yes, you're going to break the cream. Okay, I see. Beautiful.
And then one more ingredient, because obviously we're going to use a little bit of sage to wilt our pasta once it's cooked, but I thought that we could also use another ingredient from the pumpkin that is often gets neglected when making these preparations, with the seeds. So you can always take the pumpkin seeds out of the pumpkin, dry them, roast them, shell them, and then you will have some pumpkin seeds to put on your preparation. So you have pumpkin outside and pumpkin inside.
Beautiful, beautiful. No wasting, utilizing every part of the dish.
Cool, as much as we can. So I'm gonna get this on melting, and at the same time I'm gonna cook my ravioli. Once they're cooked, I'm gonna flip them in a little bit of melted butter with sage leaves, and then the dish is ready.
Let's go.
Cool.
So now for cooking the pasta, here I see that you are using cold cubes of butter, chef.
Yes, indeed. So all I want is to melt butter with a little bit of sage leaf. Okay, so by the time we melt the butter, the essential oils of the sage will already have infused the butter, so we don't need to melt it. We just want those fresh flavors in there. So all we're gonna do is put it on the pot of water and allow it to melt while we're cooking the pasta, so that we have everything ready: fondue, pasta, and butter.
Lovely. Let's go.
Okay. And here we are, ready to go. So we're just gonna wilt them in the butter, so that they're gonna get coated with this beautiful sage flavored butter. And we leave them in there for a second. We have to move quickly because we don't want anything to get cold.
And
then, thank you, Bina. Our fondue is ready. So what we're gonna do, I might just grab it. Thank you. We're gonna put just a little bit of fondue on the bottom of the plate. This goes on the side. Our pasta goes on top of it, one by one. We want a few streaks of butter in this preparation. We still want the beautiful butter to be showing. Then we just give it a twirl of butter.
I'm hungry already.
We're gonna go on with our pumpkin seeds.
It's coming up beautifully.
Let's just move maybe this one is a bit close. And then we add our sage leaves. So that all the elements of the original dish are in there, but presented, excuse me, just gonna give it a quick wipe, in a very different way.
Beautiful. So here we have tortelli alla Ferrarese, revisited by our chef ambassador Carlo M Ricci. Wow, I see, chef, you have taken out all the ingredients for dessert.
Absolutely, everything we need to make the pears.
A line of spices and a bundle of sweetness.
Absolutely. So, just like for the pasta dish, I think the best way to describe this passage is trying to revisit something that is very traditional without changing it too much.
So we are making Pere Al Vino revisited.
Absolutely. So I've taken the Pere Volpine out, not so much because I don't like them. I think they're the best option for this dish, but also mostly because I thought we could represent something with a type of pear that was more readily available that other people could use as well. You know?
I see.
They didn't have to come to us. So a more available Kaiser and something you find is nice and firm, which is what you want, so it will cook very well. However, we're not going to cook this pear.
Wow.
We are going to prepare a syrup with all our ingredients. So I'm going to take a pan. I'm going to use red wine, different from what Nonna used. This is called Lambrusco. It's a very traditional grape from
Emilia-Romagna.
But at the same time, it's also a very easily available type of wine around the world. So it's a red, fizzy wine that has got a little bit of sweetness. So my recipe is in the specific 1 part of Lambrusco, which I'm going to fortify with a little bit of Tawny port. And I'm putting Tawny port because it has a lot of character, and it's one of those wines that holds spices very well. So just like Nonna was using Pinot Noir in a way that she would have all the flavors that she wanted from the spices also in her wine, I'm going to use a little bit of port. And the idea is to put 1 part of each wine, and then the same amount of sugar.
Wow.
So we're going to start making a syrup from the very start. And then I'm going to use pretty much the spices that you would use to make a vin brûlé. Cinnamon, let's start with that, is what Nonna used as well, so it's definitely going to go in there. I'm going to use a stick because I want to filter everything out, so that is going to go in there. A little bit of star anise is also something that I want. Cloves, I'm going to put about 5 cloves in here, and there you go. And then for the last ingredient, I'm going to use pepper, black pepper. Black pepper obviously brings a lot of spice to things, but also is a very aromatic spice.
Yes, definitely.
So by adding a little bit to something like vin brûlé, or at least a flavorful wine or a spiced wine, then we're going to have an extra layer of literally like flavor, aromas, floweriness, and spiciness. So altogether, there's going to be 10 peppercorns in here. Don't freak out, all these spices are coming out.
Yeah, I see you have used all whole spices.
Absolutely. We're going to reduce this about 2/3. You can measure this by volume, but what I'm really trying to do is I'm trying to get the wines to lose all their alcohol while maintaining their acidity.
I see.
So this, if you were to try it, the preparation will be sweet, sweet, sweet with a little bit of alcohol. Then the alcohol will go away and the sweetness will suddenly disappear almost, and you will feel the acidity of the sauce again. And that's when you want to put it away from the heat.
Okay.
Cool it, and once it's cold, filter the spices.
Perfect. Let's do it.
What we want to do as well is, before we cool it, we're going to split it in half.
I see.
Because half of this we're going to use to make the pears, and with the remaining half we're going to make a jelly.
I see. Okay, so you're utilizing quite a lot of techniques here.
Absolutely. So the jelly we're going to be making with a little bit of agar-agar.
I see. Okay.
So when the liquid is still hot, we add a small amount of agar-agar, just enough to make it jellified, and then we will have a cold syrup and a cold jelly. But what are we going to do with this cold syrup?
We have to wait and see.
Cook the pears, but we're not really going to cook them. Okay. We're going to cut them into a small dice. We're going to put them in a sous vide bag with the cold syrup, and we're going to cryovac everything. So we're going to take the air out of this bag.
Okay.
So that the wine is going to be forced into the pears, but the pears will remain technically raw.
Okay, so we are going to have all the flavors and all the infusions, and we are going to face different textures of the same product in the recipe. I am very excited to go ahead.
Absolutely.
Let's go ahead with the recipe.
This goes on the stove. We've reduced our syrup. It's now time to divide it into 2 pans, and I'm going to use a little bit of agar-agar in the pan that is going to make my jelly. And agar-agar is a jellifying agent made with seed. That's the best way to explain it. It's a vegan way and vegetarian way of making jelly. So this is going to go on the stove, boil it again, and then we're going to pour it into a mold. When it's ready, we're going to have a beautifully set jelly. This, on the meantime, is going to go cool in the fridge.
Wow, chef, I see that our jelly is ready, and also our syrup.
Indeed, so the syrup is cold, the jelly is ready, so we're going to cut the jelly, and then we're going to prepare the pears. All we're going to do with the pears is we're going to peel them and cut them into cubes. Pretty much the same size.
Okay.
We're going to cut the jelly, and the jelly is going to be very easy, so we're going to cut it in the same dimension of its height. So we're going to make little cubes. We're going to try and be as precise as we can.
You are very precise here.
We want to make cubes as cubey as possible, so we don't want to get it wrong.
Is this your interpretation of a traditional recipe?
Well, the traditional recipe gets a little bit of wine in the plate, right? It's like
Yes.
it really makes kind of the preparation. And I didn't want to omit things, but I also didn't want something cold, hot. I wanted the bottom of the dessert to be cold and the top to be hot. So
I see.
I thought, what better than making a cold jelly out of it? And being made with agar-agar is something that will stand up to heat, because our agar-agar doesn't remelt that easily. So we're
Yes.
gonna have this kind of odd mixture of pears and jelly with zabaione on top.
Wow. So I see, chef, that the recipe, the modern version of this recipe, incorporates a lot of chemistry and physics into the traditional recipe.
Yeah, so basically, I guess the best way to say it is we're trying to play with the same flavors but give it a different effect, maybe.
Yes, there is a lot of science and technique into it, whereas it is holding its firm foot in traditions. Beautiful. So, chef, let us start with the pear.
Absolutely. It's really just a matter of peeling the pear. I use a potato peeler so we have a nice, even, clean job. And then we're gonna cut it into cubes. And also cutting it into cubes, just like the original recipe, that uses all the pear. You know, if you've noticed, the original recipe even uses the skin, right?
Yes.
So we don't want to waste anything of this pear. We want to use everything. We're just gonna leave out the things that you're not gonna eat. Obviously, in the traditional recipe, you would use the skin as well. You would eat the skin as well. But here, we keep it out and we try to take as little out of the pear as possible. And then we're gonna cut it in cubes. And I say here, don't obsess about making them perfect. Just make sure you have them, because this is something that is not gonna be seen in the recipe. And it's really all about consistency in the mouth. And these two things are gonna have a similar shape, but they're gonna be very, very different when you bite through them. And they're gonna be hidden by al zabaione. They're gonna be under al zabaione. So the customer is not really gonna be able to see what is going on in the dish. He's just gonna see the zabaione, and this is gonna be hiding underneath it. And also, let's not forget, the zabaione is gonna be hot, and this preparation is gonna be cold.
And yet we are very precise.
We'll try. Oh, that's not very precise, but
There, I got it.
Good, okay.
Yeah, I got it. You see?
Yeah, so we'll try it.
Yeah. It's
Cool.
beautiful.
So let's cut 2 pairs.
I can peel the other
Yeah,
one.
cool, bring it on. And then we put them in the bag, okay? We put them in 2 different bags, okay?
Okay.
One we sous vide right now, and the other one we sous vide right now, and the other one we keep for later on, okay?
Okay. So I see we are ready with our pears.
Absolutely. They're diced. What we need then is a lemon, 2 spent vanilla sticks, so you know with the beans already scraped out, and then we need sous vide bags.
Perfect.
So we're gonna put literally, thank you very much, Benita, our pear. Opla. We're gonna put our pear in the bag. That's the one. Just one. That's the one. A pear in the bag. We're gonna add a spent vanilla stick, a couple of zest of lemon, a couple of zest of lemon that we want to make sure are as clean as possible from any white bits that we want to remove. Here we are, and then we go in the bag with the syrup. And all we're gonna do now is we're gonna take all the air out of it, and then the wine is literally gonna go in the pears.
And we are ready with our sous vide bag. And now let us prepare the zabaione cream to go with our Pere Al Vino.
So, same ingredients as we seen with Nonna, just different procedure. I'm trying to get as much foam as possible into my zabaione, so I'm gonna start it with a planetary mixer. So all my ingredients, or at least my yolks and my sugar, are gonna go in there, and I'm gonna whisk this to the point where it kind of like can whisk no more to get as foamy as possible. At that stage, I'm gonna put it onto the heat. I'm gonna add marsala, exactly the same wine that Nonna used, and I'm gonna finish cooking it.
Okay, then you're gonna hand whisk and finish.
Absolutely. Once it's on the heat, I'm gonna hand whisk it, and I'm gonna add the wine only once I'm on the heat.
Okay, that's very lovely. So our egg yolk and sugar mix is already ready.
Yeah, sure. We want to get it nice and foamy. So nice and white, I guess that's kind of like the technical term. 800 degrees. So you want to put a lot of air into it already. And then at this point, you go on the heat, you start heating it, and you slowly add the wine. Once it's on the heat, it's going to get a lot of volume. The air is going to expand, it's going to incorporate more air, and that's exactly what we want.
Okay.
Let's do it.
And now we are ready to plate our dessert. Pere Al Vino Revisited.
So zabaione is ready, is nice and foamy. Okay, it kind of, the technical term we use is that it rides, so that when we pick it up and we go onto itself, we can see its trail.
I can see it.
We want to keep it like that. The pears, as you can see, have soaked up all the wine. So we're going to go in the plate with a few pears, a little bit of jelly. And then we want to make sure to keep this nice and as in the center as possible, because obviously our zabaione is going to go over it. So we keep it in the center, but flat. We add a couple of pine nuts. I've toasted them because I just like the toastiness of the pine nuts.
The nutty, crunchy,
Absolutely,
toasted. Okay.
absolutely. And then this is where zabaione really comes into play. If in the normal dish you can see what goes on, here we're gonna cover everything with zabaione. The customer really has to go through it before he actually
Find
gets
the pear under the zabaione.
Absolutely. And the idea is to go on the dish first on the side with zabaione, so that we're going to contain our preparation, and then put a little bit in the center on top. I love zabaione, so I really like it to shine on this plate. We kind of give it a bit of movement, and then we hide everything with a few nuts, pine nuts, and a couple of pieces of jelly. Get it to the customer as fast as we can.
Beautiful. Here